All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and have you seen that Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Whitt Jr. initial press conference? Boy, that was amazing, especially on Joe Whitt Jr.'s end. You know me, this is your boy Rico of RicoScores. We're going to dive into the new Washington Commanders offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury and defensive coordinator Joe Whitt Jr.'s first press conference as being coaches for the Washington Commanders. We're going to do a deep dive into that. Whether you've already seen it or not, we're still going to do a deep dive because there may be a lot of things you miss. You know, whenever we're talking about press conferences, we're reading in between the lines. We're digging a little bit deeper than the surface stuff that they say. Even though Joe Whitt Jr. and Cliff Kingsbury gave more information than I expected. So they did a lot of my job for me, but we're still going to dive even deeper than that. But we got to talk about how Cliff Kingsbury identified some of the criteria for a quarterback that he's looking for this organization. Also, Joe Whitt Jr. gave so much great information about the philosophy, even some X's and O's things about what they're looking for in an edge rusher, what they're looking for in the DB, how the coaches need to do their job, all of that type of stuff. He completely killed his press conference, arguably the best presser I've seen in a long time here. I mean, Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and even Cliff Kingsbury had good press conferences as well. But Joe Whitt Jr.'s was elite. It was on a different level. I'm not even the type of guy that really gets excited about press conferences, and I don't like the one-liners, but this one was crazy. So many quotables that we got to dive into. I love his philosophy. I love his mission. I'm super excited and optimistic about what this Commanders defense is going to look like under him. Kingsbury was very focused and very serious, whereas Joe Whitt Jr. was more so intense, and he seems like he's ready to knock some heads off and to build an identity for this team. I'm super excited. So before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Stay tuned for all of the content. We're pretty much wrapping up all of the coaching hires and front office things. We have a few more that I need to announce and talk about, especially like we stole a really good staffer from the Falcons that Raheem Morris, the new Falcons head coach, was excited to work with. We're going to talk about that. We're also bringing in 2 ex-Steelers players. We're bringing in a celebrity actor to be a part of our staff as well. It's a lot going on, so be on the lookout for that video later on this evening / tonight. And then I plan on doing like a full deep dive review of our entire coaching staff now that it's finalized, so stay tuned for that video. That will probably come out tomorrow. And then of course, now that we're getting all of that stuff out the way, we're about to go straight into free agency, mock drafts, and off-season mocks as well, because again, like I've said in previous videos, I want to do entire off-season mocks. Basically, like if we get these position groups in free agency, we address that, like edge rusher and corner in free agency, then we can focus on these other position groups in the draft, and then maybe I'll switch it up. Maybe instead of getting edge in free agency, we'll focus on offensive line in free agency and then attack defense in the draft. So we'll do some mock drafts like that. Of course, I'm working on a trade back mock draft potentially if we're willing to just go ahead and roll with Sam Howell as our quarterback, all of that type of stuff, or maybe even trade for a Justin Fields trade back scenario, all of that type of stuff. But without further ado, instead of wasting more of y'all time, let's get to what y'all are here for. Let's get it. All right, so let's go ahead and start with Cliff Kingsbury. We're just going to go in order of when they had their press conferences. I know a lot of people are probably here mostly for Joe Whitt Jr., but I feel like Cliff Kingsbury has some really interesting points to bring up as well. First of all, Cliff Kingsbury declined to get into specifics with the Raiders and the process of getting here. Just said he has the utmost respect for Antonio Pierce. And again, Antonio Pierce on the Pivot podcast even said it himself. It was Magic Johnson. We were hearing reports like last week that it was probably Magic Johnson, and I don't know if that was just an idea being thrown out there or if somebody actually heard something through the grapevine, but there were rumors going around that it was Magic Johnson that was able to sway Cliff Kingsbury, that was almost about to put pen to paper for the Raiders and instead come to the Washington Commanders. And of course, the Washington Commanders were super excited about that. We were in on it. As soon as he said that he was available, we were in on it immediately. And I'm assuming that Magic Johnson was the reason for that, because then again, Antonio Pierce, now the Raiders head coach, he was the interim head coach last year, but now he's officially the head coach this year. Basically, he says, shout out to Magic Johnson. If I'm going to lose to anybody, it's him. So even though Cliff Kingsbury is being professional and not diving into it, it sounds like Magic Johnson being our owner has actually impacted this team. I know a lot of people were saying that, well, he only owns like a small percentage of the team. What is he actually going to do? Josh Harris is actually running things. Mitchell Rails is helping as far as like the stadium and the money and business side of things. What is Magic Johnson going to do other than just tweet? And I know a lot of people were saying things like that. Well, there you go. Magic Johnson is the reason that we were able to bring in Cliff Kingsbury, an elite offensive-minded coach, great quarterback developer, and then everything else has fallen into place since after bringing him in on the offensive side of the coaching staff. I'm really excited, and all of this starts with Magic Johnson. A lot of it started from Dan Quinn, a lot of it started from Adam Peters, and of course, all of this started from Josh Harris, but you got to give Magic Johnson some credit there as well. I know that's not necessarily a Cliff Kingsbury thing, but I felt like we needed to talk about that while we were here. Moving on, back to Cliff Kingsbury, as far as running the air raid offense, he said that he threw it a ton in college because of his quarterback talent, but the NFL just doesn't work like that. He said, quote, we want to be balanced. We want to be able to run the ball and play action passes and do whatever it takes to win. I wouldn't categorize anything we do under that name, unquote. And I love that. And I've brought up the point in my Anthony Lynn video that with him being an ex-offensive coordinator, an ex-head coach, being a proven winner, being the run game coordinator for the 49ers, who just had the best, literally the #1 statistical rushing attack in the NFL. We didn't hire him just to be like a little voice in the offensive room. No, he's literally the counter to Cliff Kingsbury. Now, granted, Cliff Kingsbury did show in that 2021 season that they are willing to run the ball more than most air raid systems do. And he was willing to go under center more than probably a lot of people realize. So he's already made that transition to adjusting his air raid offense to what the NFL requires, and that is running the ball more play action pass, more under center and things like that. And I also talked about in another video how playing under center helped Brock Purdy and CJ Stroud out a lot. It made reading defenses way easier for them rather than being in shotgun all the time. So that's very useful. But my main point was in another video, I guess it was yesterday. I've been making so many videos, I've lost track of what video it was, when I made the video, whatever. But I talked about how Anthony Lynn being such a strong presence and opinion in the building is going to be huge for Cliff Kingsbury, because at the end of the day, he's a quarterback guy, he's a passing guy, he's an air raid system guy. And as much as he wants to say that he wants to run the ball and all of that type of stuff, at the end of the day, bringing in an Anthony Lynn, a former head coach, to come in and just simply be the running backs coach and running game coordinator lets you know that he's going to have a heavy influence and impact on how much we run the ball in this offense. No matter how much Cliff Kingsbury wants to pass the ball, Anthony Lynn is coming here to enforce running the ball. It's not like we just hired some random guy, some up-and-comer young guy that maybe Cliff Kingsbury will hear his opinions out every now. No, Anthony Lynn, for us to be able to sway him to go from rushing game coordinator from the 49ers that were just in the Super Bowl to come here and be our rushing game coordinator, no promotion at all, not even assistant head coach added to his title, you know that the Commanders are giving him a lot of power in this offense. So Cliff Kingsbury, basically the best way to word this is that we have checks and balances here. We have a guy that's responsible for one thing. I know Cliff Kingsbury is running the offense, it's his offense, he's calling the plays, but Anthony Lynn will have a lot more influence and say in what's going on, especially as far as running the ball wise, than probably a lot of people think when you just simply look at his title as run game coordinator. No, he's almost like a co-offensive coordinator. We're going to run the ball with Anthony Lynn here. He didn't come here just to play around. We didn't hire him to waste our time, and we did not hire him to waste his time either. So let me just go ahead and put that out there. And Cliff Kingsbury is even acknowledging that in his quote. Moving on, Cliff Kingsbury also talked about Anthony Lynn as well. He said, quote, excited about Anthony. We're going to see where he fits in. He's had a tremendous track record with running backs and run scheme. It will be collaborative, unquote. And I want to emphasize that word, collaborative. Anthony Lynn is not coming here to play around. This is not your typical run game coordinator. Just to warn you, we're going to run the ball a lot more than people probably expect out of an air raid system, especially one ran by Cliff Kingsbury, the guy that developed Kyler Murray, the guy that developed Pat Mahomes and turned him into a first-round pick, the guy that had everybody fooled with Johnny Manziel thinking that he was a really good quarterback, that guy. Also, Cliff Kingsbury was asked about what makes a successful NFL offense, and I loved his answer. He said, quote, being able to adapt your personnel, do what you do best, and not ask them to do what they can't. You got to be able to run the football in 4-minute drills, 4-minute situations, and throw it in 2-minute situations. I love all of those answers. We could spend like 10 minutes each on all parts of that answer, like being able to adapt your personnel. Thank you. Do what you do best and not ask them to do what they can't. Thank you. You need to be able to run the ball in 4 minutes. Thank you. And you need to be able to throw the ball and make off-schedule plays in 2 minutes. Thank you, man. I love the fact that he acknowledges that those are big keys to a successful, not only offense, but a successful team that's playing in late December, playing in January, and hopefully playing in February as well. Kingsbury also said that he's not afraid to ask questions, and he's big on evolving the philosophy and the scheme. So that's huge, because one of the biggest questions that a lot of us have for Cliff Kingsbury is that last time we saw him at the NFL level being the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals, it seems like once defenses adjusted to him, he didn't do the best job of adjusting back and to counter their counter, basically. He made some adjustments, some things worked, but some things didn't, and overall, you could argue that he didn't do a great job of adjusting. Now it sounds like with his second opportunity at the NFL level, now that he's been an offensive coordinator, all he has to focus on is that. He doesn't have to worry about head coaching. He doesn't have to worry about personnel decisions. He doesn't have to worry about free agency, draft, all of these type of things, and holding a whole coaching staff together. That's why Dan Quinn has alleviated defensive play calling duties and running the defense to Joe Whitt Jr. He's delegated offensive coordinator and running the entire offense to Cliff Kingsbury. Dan Quinn is here to literally make sure everything is running smoothly. Everything is a cohesive unit. We have chemistry. Everybody's responsibility and roles are specifically identified, very detailed. No holes left unchecked, nothing like that. And that's where Cliff Kingsbury struggled as an offensive-minded head coach, because he had to worry about so many things that just he wasn't ready to handle. Same thing with Ben Johnson. That's probably why he stayed in Detroit. Just because you're a genius at drawing up offenses and scoring points and all that type of stuff, when you're a head coach, there's a whole nother side to this thing that most people just, first of all, don't want to deal with. In Ben Johnson's case, or Cliff Kingsbury's case, didn't do a great job of handling it. And now he's like, I'm good on that. Just let me focus on offense. Let me do what I do best and let me kill that. And I'm super excited that now with this second chance at the NFL, again, not having to worry about all that head coaching stuff, just purely offense, and specifically just the passing side of it, but also marrying that passing with the run game with a lot of help from Anthony Lynn. But even on the passing side, from Brian Johnson, ex-Eagles offensive coordinator, there's so many elite minds here to help him that I feel like trying to evolve the philosophy of the offense and the scheme and everything should be we should have a pretty high success rate with that. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, because nothing is really easy, but I feel like when Cliff Kingsbury says that, he really means it, and I think we will be able to adapt to whatever we need to do. Maybe we have a certain game plan going against a certain defense, and then we come in with a completely different one depending on the other defense that we're going against. We're going to be willing to adapt and adjust to whatever is necessary to just simply win the game that Sunday. I'm really excited about that. Also, Kingsbury said he likes to learn what makes quarterbacks tick. Get to the bottom of who they are as people, not just the X's and O's, but who are you off the field? Film study, work ethic, all of that type of stuff. I'm really excited about that. And also because there were reports that the reason that him and Kyler Murray started to have a falling off towards the end of his coaching regime as the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals was that Kyler Murray preferred to be coached really hard, to have a guy on his back all of the time, on his neck, just super duper micromanaging and meddling all of the time. Somebody that's always on him, always nagging. Cliff Kingsbury isn't that type of guy. Maybe Cliff Kingsbury, now realizing that with his next opportunity, he's basically saying that, hey, we got to figure out who this quarterback is, how he prefers to be coached. What's the best way of coaching this guy? Should I be aggressive? Should I be more passive, more chill like I naturally am? And basically, he's saying that he's learned his lesson from the Arizona Cardinals, and going into this next opportunity, whatever quarterback we end up potentially drafting number 2 overall, he's willing to do what it takes to get the best out of him, even if that means that he has to adjust on his side. Thank you for that. Also, Cliff Kingsbury basically dodged Ben Standig's question about Caleb Williams, but he did say, quote, he's a great kid, no doubt. Just getting to watch Lincoln Riley from afar and observe him and how he does things was huge. Really diving back into everyday teaching. This allowed me to get back into that, unquote. So he feels like basically, even though this was a Caleb Williams question, the thing I take from this the most is that him stepping down from being a head coach at the NFL level to just being a senior offensive assistant at the college level to basically being the right-hand man of his own pupil. He went from being the teacher to the pupil to his pupil to his student. He feels like, if anything, that was more therapeutic, and it really helped him kind of get back to the basics. And he's going to use that knowledge and that experience to help basically be a better offensive coordinator now that he's getting a bigger opportunity again at the NFL level. So when you look at it from multiple angles, Cliff Kingsbury is basically like, yeah, I learned my lesson. I know what I must do this time around to do everything the right way. I'm super excited about that. Of course, Cliff Kingsbury would love to get Caleb Williams. Oh, of course he's his number one quarterback in this draft. But that's not enough for us to basically be willing to trade up and go get him. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how much Cliff Kingsbury likes Caleb Williams. And I appreciate him for being professional and not saying how much he loves him. But we all know how much he loves him, man. Come on now. That's why even in my Doug Williams video, when he said that we're 9 out of 10 chance taking quarterback, it's like, I mean, on one end, Doug Williams, why? Like, how does that help anybody? What is even the point of saying that? But at the same time, bro, everybody knows they're going quarterback, bro. I can see the logic of us trading back, and I would be happy either way. Like I said in my live stream earlier when I was watching these press conferences live, I basically said something to the extent of that once we had the number 2 overall pick, we won. Whether we pick a quarterback number 2 overall, whether we trade back, whatever we do, it's gonna be a good answer. I'm very confident in the fact that it will be a good idea no matter what we do with that number 2 overall pick. But after that, if you want to dive deeper, it's basically an argument as to whether what's the best thing we could do. But I feel like there's no bad move we can make. I want to get that out the way. Whether we trade back, whether we take a quarterback at number 2, whether it's Jayden Daniels or Drake May, whoever between those top guys, I feel like there's no such thing as a bad idea. I just have my preference of staying number 2 and getting Jayden Daniels. That's my preference. But if we take Drake May, I'm happy. That's a good idea. I can see from the positive side of things how that could be a great idea potentially. If we trade back and stick with Sam Howell, or maybe even trade like a late round draft pick for Justin Fields, and we get an elite tackle, an elite playmaker like a Marvin Harrison Jr., and then we figure things out from there, that's also a pretty good idea. Not my preference, but I feel like the main thing is once we had the number 2 overall pick going into this draft and we have the most cap space and we've been putting together this staff, I feel like we pretty much can't miss. Now, what's the best decision? That's what we can debate about. Again, to me, Jayden Daniels number 2 overall, but we can't really miss. So I'm really excited about that. Also, Cliff Kingsbury was asked about his ideal fit for a quarterback. He jokingly said the Chiefs quarterback as in Pat Mahomes, and that's a great answer, man. Everybody clearly wants a Pat Mahomes. I love the fact that he was willing to give us a little humor there, but also some dead serious honesty. Everybody wants a Pat Mahomes, especially an air raid system. Especially since he's the guy that literally coached Pat Mahomes and turned him into the first round pick that the Chiefs wanted. Because you got to remember, I know the Chiefs took Pat Mahomes and made him and were a large reason as to why he's a multi-Super Bowl winner, best quarterback in the NFL, arguably the best quarterback of all time. But you got to remember, Cliff Kingsbury was the guy that developed that guy from an unknown recruit. From most people were not aware of Pat Mahomes as a high school recruit. He saw that recruit, saw the natural talent in him, and then developed him into a first round pick that a lot of people felt like the Chiefs reached on to an extent back then. And we're like, why would y'all even go and get a guy improving like that? Cliff Kingsbury was the reason that Pat Mahomes looked good enough to the Chiefs for them to be willing to take him in the first round. So we got to remember that, man. This is the same guy that coached that guy. I'm pretty sure he's very proud of him. He would love to get another one of those guys, of course. But then he said, when the money is on the table, you have to make plays with your feet, move around enough to escape and make a play. You don't necessarily have to be Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, but you have to buy time. And what I take from that is the first half of the answer, of course, sounds like, man, that boy is looking for his next Pat Mahomes. And who's the closest thing to potentially being Pat Mahomes? Another guy that he helped coach, Caleb Williams. But of course, for reasons I've already stated, highly doubt we're going to get him. But then the second half of that answer, outside of the Chiefs quarterback part, it sounds more like Jayden Daniels to me. But also, with the very last sentence, it leaves the door open on a Drake May who has underrated mobility. So it's very interesting because, again, to go back to the quote, when the money is on the table, you have to make plays with your feet, move around enough to escape and make a play. Jayden Daniels was arguably the best at that last year, especially if you're just talking about between him and Drake May. But at the same time, when he says you don't have to be Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray, just have to buy time, that's Drake May as well. That leaves the door open to potentially Drake May being the target, because Drake May, in my opinion, does have underrated mobility. And again, even though I prefer Jayden Daniels, and it's a pretty big gap to me, it's like Caleb Williams #1 gap, Jayden Daniels #1 pretty big gap, and then Drake May after that. I still like Drake May. Just because I love Jayden Daniels does not mean I do not like Drake May, but I do have my preferences. Now, Cliff Kingsbury also said that he's starting to look through the Commanders' offense, and he said that there are some pieces there. And I would agree. I don't feel like we have the right offensive lineman yet. I feel like we need to add some receivers. Maybe you want to re-sign Antonio Gibson or find an Antonio Gibson replacement in free agency or the draft. But it's not like we just are completely devoid of any talent. You can build something around Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and if you re-sign Curtis Samuel. And Samuel Cosme, I'm working on a video right now. This is one of those videos where I keep talking about I have all of these ideas, but I got to get y'all these breaking news and the things that are happening right now in Commanders land first. But I'm working on a video basically breaking down how Samuel Cosme is arguably the best player on this entire roster right now, including Terry McLaurin, including Jonathan Allen, including Deron Payne. So you have some things to work around. You have some things to work with, and I like the fact that Cliff Kingsbury has already basically started evaluating the roster and seeing where we can go from here. We got these things, now we need to work on these holes right here, these weaknesses right here, and then we may have something cooking. But it's very early in the process, so we'll see how that goes. Cliff Kingsbury talked about Dan Quinn as well. He said, quote, he's a guy I've always looked at as if there's an opportunity, it would be great to work with him. There's no better leader than Dan Quinn and Adam Peters, unquote. I completely agree. Now, that sounds a little fake just because like you were trying to get that Raiders job until Magic Johnson stepped in, but maybe he was unaware of the fact that Dan Quinn was going to be our head coach at the time, so maybe it's not fake. I don't know. Either way, Cliff Kingsbury talked about Bobby Johnson, his passing game coordinator, technically his right-hand man on the passing game side, just like Anthony Lynn is his right-hand man on the run game side. He said, quote, worked with some great offenses in Buffalo, like some run game stuff and some tempo stuff from him. Says Johnson got rave reviews from people he and Dan Quinn really trust. So Dan Quinn hired Cliff Kingsbury, and then together they went and looked around and found and figured out who they would prefer as a passing game coordinator, and they both landed on Bobby Johnson together as a unanimous decision, it sounds like, from both of those guys. A collaborative effort to bring him in, and the fact that they've also, not only do they like what he's done X's and O's wise, but they've heard great reviews from behind the scenes about him from a lot of people that they trust. That's great to hear. Also, Kingsbury called David Blau one of the smartest QBs he's ever been around. That's our recently hired assistant quarterbacks coach. He's going to be the right-hand man to Tavita Pritchard, who a lot of teams were interested in and were trying to give him a job offer elsewhere, but he decided to stay with the Commanders. So shouts out to him for that. But we're also bringing in David Blau, a really young, I mean, he was just a quarterback like just last year, 2 years ago. And it's not surprising you have a guy named Bruce Feldman that's big analyst for the NFL. He brings up a great point that it's not surprising to see Blau end up in coaching. Dating back to his Elite 11 days, he always seemed wise beyond his years. So a lot of people are really high on this David Blau hiring. And with Blau being in the league very recently as a player, I actually feel like that's potentially very helpful for a very young quarterback that we're potentially going to end up drafting. Just basically from a translation and a relatability standpoint. I love how this staff is basically hitting every corner and looking under every rock, no stone left unturned. Like, it seems like they've thought of and accounted for every little detail with these hires throughout the front office and the coaching staff, because they already had Tavita Pritchard, they already have Brian Johnson, Cliff Kingsbury, all of these quarterback developers. They said, well, how about we go get an assistant quarterbacks coach that was just very recently in the NFL, so at the very least that young quarterback has somebody that he can relate to just a little bit more. Again, they've thought about everything when it comes to these hires. Shouts out to Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, and Josh Harris for that. Also, fun fact, wouldn't be a video without Resh Manuel. Again, if you're not following him on Twitter, you're missing out. Fun fact, David Blau is also Christian Gonzalez's brother-in-law. which is really interesting. Maybe when Christian Gonzalez's contract ends, maybe we can get a hold of him and bring him here. I don't know. That may not matter at all, but I just thought that was really interesting. Shouts out to Rich Manuel for the most random facts. I don't know how he does it, but he does it. Now moving on to Joe Whitt Jr., who we're going to talk about for way longer than Cliff Kingsbury. We're already 25 minutes into this recording. This video is probably about to go for an hour long, I'm assuming, but let's get to it, man. And everybody seems very excited about him. Like, it's like unanimous. Everywhere you look on social media, especially Twitter, everybody is very excited about Joe Whitt Jr. and the press conference that he had. I came in hoping that he would be pretty good. I thought that just based on from things I heard about him in the past, from Dan Quinn himself and things like that, he was going to be a little bit more calm and collected. Because Dan Quinn has always said Dan Quinn is the more passionate leader, the fiery guy that's celebrating with players, where Joe Whitt Jr. is the logical thinker, thinking 3 steps ahead. Again, back with my Joe Whitt Jr. video when we hired him and I broke him down. And while I was excited about the hire, I brought up an example that Joe Whitt Jr. brought up himself, basically saying that there was a moment when Deron Bland had a pick 6. Dan Quinn is too busy celebrating with the team, and you need that. You need the guy that's going to celebrate with the team, be extra hype, and that's the type of guy that players rally around and are really willing to run through a brick wall for. But then Joe Whitt Jr., what he does is he's thinking ahead. He's like, okay, so Deron Bland must be tired after that pick 6 he just got, right? He just did all of that running. He's typically plays on special teams. How about we give him a rest this time, because I'm sure he's tired. And nobody else really thought about that. And you never know. If Joe Whitt Jr. didn't make that call, maybe Deron Bland is out there like, yes, sir, let me go out there. I just had a pick 6. Let me go and go out on special teams like I'm supposed to do, like a good player should if asked to do so. And maybe he's so tired that he ends up having a blunder on special teams, and then that opposing team is able to basically run a kickback for a touchdown. Joe Whitt Jr. is the chess guy behind the scenes, the logical thinker. If you watch basically anime like the Lelouch from Code Geass, that's who Joe Whitt Jr. is. So that's everything I was hearing about him from behind the scenes. I wasn't expecting him to be this fiery, this passionate, this serious and intense. I kept saying the word intense while I was live streaming and watching the press conferences at the same time. The main word I got from it was intense. This guy is like way more intense than I expected. I thought he was going to be more chill, calm, collected, kind of the thinker. Again, like the Lelouch, but he's like Lelouch, but like really, I don't know. It's like a certain aggression to him, and I loved it. Shouts out to Mark Bullock from the UK for this tweet. I always reference him. Always a great person to follow on Twitter. Subscribe to his Substack. He does film sessions and everything. Great film sessions. But he tweeted, I bet Joe Whitt Jr. has created more excitement for Washington fans in 5 minutes of this presser than the last defensive coordinator did in 4 years. And that's a great point. I'm very sure that he's generated more excitement than Jack Del Rio ever has. And it was just a quick little few minute presser. I mean, it was just that amazing. When you're looking at the presser and you're looking at Twitter live at the same time, everybody was talking and tweeting about how they were ready to run through a wall for this guy, like right now. Give me a helmet. I was seeing stuff like that. There's a huge difference going from Jack Del Rio to Joe Whitt Jr. so far. Just in this press conference alone. We'll see if it matters X's and O's wise, but press conference alone, he's already sold me. And it's not just me, it's everywhere you look in Commanders land. It seems like Cliff Kingsbury is an afterthought at this point. You would forget that he even had a press conference. Joe Whitt Jr., it was good that they saved him for last, because boy, I mean, it's as if Cliff Kingsbury didn't even have a press conference today when you look around on Twitter. Everybody's just talking about Joe Whitt Jr., and with good reason. We're about to dive into that. And Chris Russell of the Locked On Commanders podcast, I completely agree. He said on Twitter, if you can hit a grand slam in a press conference, Joe Whitt Jr. just did. In his first time meeting with the media and talking to Commanders fans, really, really impressive. Of course, PCs don't equal winning games, but man, completely agree with what he tweeted. And I agree with Mark Bullock. Here he goes again. Completely 110% agree with this. I'm not usually the one to buy into coaches' press conferences, but Joe Whitt Jr. just knocked that one out the park. I completely agree. I typically don't really care about press conferences. I was the type that before I even created my YouTube channel, I wasn't even really the type of guy that would pull up to press conferences. But I just had a feeling like, all right, let me pull up to this Cliff Kingsbury, because he may say something about quarterbacks, and then Joe Whitt Jr. may surprise some people. I didn't expect all of this, but I was really curious, because this is not a guy that we've heard his voice. Like we have evidence of Cliff Kingsbury interacting with players on the sideline, in practice, in games, talking. We've heard his voice. We've seen his face. Joe Whitt Jr. was a little bit more mysterious. I was like, let me pull up just in case. I've heard great things about him, so let me pull up. But he killed it. I didn't expect to be that much of a fan of his leaving this press conference. I mean, we've been talking about how hyped we are about bringing in Ken Norton Jr. as linebackers coach and Jason Simmons as a defensive passing game coordinator. All these other hires we've been hyping up way more. Anthony Lynn as a run game coordinator. Come on now. John Pagano, ex-defensive coordinator, coming in just to be a senior defensive assistant. Like, we've been so hyped about so many of these hires that it feels like we've kind of forgotten about Joe Whitt Jr. because all of his like potential fame, like when he was hired, was kind of overshadowed by Dan Quinn becoming the head coach, Cliff Kingsbury becoming the offensive coordinator. Brian Johnson was soon hired to the offensive staff after that. We were so worried about all of those shiny toys that we kind of overlooked Joe Whitt Jr. We didn't give him his fair shot to fame and celebration. And boy, we were wrong. Because boy, looking now, this guy seems like one of the coaches I'm the most excited about. Honestly, probably the most excited about at this point, because he seems like he has the mentality that I hope this entire team has, whether you play special teams, whether you play offense, whether you play defense, whether you're a starter, a backup, coach, front office member, executive. I don't care. I want everybody to think like Joe Whitt Jr. that has anything to do with the Commanders winning. Even if you're the water boy, I want you to be Joe Whitt Jr. right now, based on this press conference. And he's even excited on his end, which makes me even more excited as well. Even beyond the things that he said, again, we're about to dive into all of that. Even just the fact that he's excited. He's like genuinely excited. This is not just a fake, yeah, I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm so excited. I just can't hide it. No, he's like genuinely, you can see it in his face. You can hear it in his voice. He's very excited about this. He said, quote, I've been waiting for this for a long time, unquote. Now, first of all, he could be talking about two things. First of all, being a coach for the Commanders, which I truly believe, but also this is his first chance to be a defensive coordinator and to call plays. This is his first time ever doing that in his NFL coaching career, so I'm pretty sure he's excited about both. But he even said that Sean Taylor is his favorite player and that it's an honor to coach here just from that alone, on top of other several reasons that he's excited to be a coach for the Washington Commanders, the history and all of that type of stuff. But he himself went out of his way to say that Sean Taylor is literally his favorite player ever, and that he's excited to coach for the Burgundy and Gold, just simply because of that, just alone, just to start off with that. Amazing. I mean, I feel like that sold a lot of people alone. And then also, he was asked if he was ready to be a coordinator. I love his answer. It was so much confidence. Like, of course, like, I've been coaching for 18 years. Like, of course I've been ready. Like, I love the way he answered that. He couldn't have answered that any better to me. Because most people, if you ask if they're ready to be a coordinator, they're going to bring up, well, I did this. I did this. He didn't even feel the need to expound on that, like to provide any great detail. He was like, man, I've been doing this for 18 years. What you think I am? Like, you know what I'm saying? I love that answer. Also, Joe Whitt Jr. talked about the fact that he said, quote, we have coaches from different trees, and we did that by design. This was on purpose. This was deliberate because we wanted to have ideas outside from what I did in my past. I absolutely love that. That's one of my favorite quotes, and I'm probably going to say that a few times in this video. One of my favorite quotes. I mean, which quote is actually my favorite, but I'll let y'all be the judge of what are y'all the favorite quotes from this. And these are not just quotes. I think this is the type of guy that's going to walk the walk instead of only talking the talk. He talked that talk real good. He was talking today, but I think he's also the guy that's going to walk the walk as well. I'm very optimistic about that. But that talking, man, he said that, I love that. That's the reason why the staff is so diverse, not only in age and experience, but also from different teams. Jason Simmons is coming from the Raiders. You have people coming from, former defensive coordinators that are coming here from several different teams. Ken Norton Jr. from the Seahawks, his time there with other teams, the Raiders with John Pagano, all kinds of people all over the place. And basically the idea is that this was on purpose. That was not just some random thing that, oh, look, wow, we actually did hire a bunch of guys from different teams. No, they went into this coaching hiring process wanting to achieve that goal, because he literally said that, yeah, even though we are known as the defense that orchestrated the most turnovers over the past 3 seasons with the Cowboys, we want influences from other defenses as well. Give me the best of all different worlds, not just both worlds, but all different worlds. Like Jason Simmons coming from the Raiders, bring with you what worked over there. We may incorporate some of that into our defense. Ken Norton Jr., what you did with the Seahawks, bring some of that with you. All of that, like, they're doing that from all different levels, every way possible. Daryl Tapp, defensive lines coach, bring some of that 49ers with you. Bring some of that philosophy. Whitt had y'all working so well over there. Whitt had y'all running such a smooth, effective, and dominant operation there. Bring some of that with you. We want to hear your voice. We want to hear your opinions, your influence, and we're gonna put this basically in a big cauldron, and we're gonna swirl this around, and we're gonna hopefully create like the best defense ever. That's basically the goal, and I'm really excited about that. And again, Grant Paulson even said it himself. Joe Whitt Jr. has me ready to run through a brick wall because he said, quote, "It's more about the play style than anything else. We're going to get that right first. We're going to run and hit as a defense. The way that we live is not for everybody because we are going to put our bodies on people in a violent manner." Oh, that is music to my ears for multiple reasons. First of all, if you want to hear it from him himself, here's a partial clip of that real quick.
And I just told this to our staff, the defensive staff. We had our first staff. The way that we live is not for everybody, okay? It's not, all right? Because we're going to run and put our bodies on people in a violent manner, all right? And so we're going to get that play style right first.
Like, how can you hear that and not be excited, man? Like, he clearly means business. And he gave the message to his staff saying, quote, "The way that we live is not for everybody," unquote. That's for players, that's for coaches, that's for everybody. I love that message because basically he's saying player-wise, this staff is going to weed out the weak very quickly. Either you are built for this or you're not, plain and simple. And it's more of a mentality and an emotional thing than a physical thing. And as a Georgia Bulldog fan, and with how Kirby Smart has built us to be a dominant force with basically the same mentality, I'm super excited. Because the main thing that a lot of people get wrong when it comes to building a team, to build a Super Bowl contender, a championship contender, is that assuming that all physical freaks are great talents and that's it. It's just that cut and dry. Yeah, they may have everything they need on the physical side, but if they don't have both the mental and emotional part of it as well, then it won't work. That's why you see so many 5-star recruits not pan out at the college level. That's why you see so many first-round picks, second-round picks become busts left and right all of the time. It's not just physical, it's mental and emotional as well. And Joe Whitt Jr. is acknowledging the fact that that's what matters the most. Again, he literally said it's more about the play style than basically the scheme itself. We're going to get that right first. We're going to run, we're going to hit, we're going to put bodies on people in a very violent manner. He's identifying the identity that this team will have. Doesn't matter if we're running a 3-4, doesn't matter if we're running a 4-3. At the end of the day, we're going to play a certain style of football, and that's what's going to work and win us games. Basically, I'm super excited. I mean, coaching matters, X's and O's matter, scheme matters, strategy matters, but there's also a lot more to it than that, man. And for the team that just led the NFL in creating turnovers over the past 3 seasons, I'm gonna take his word for it. Also, he said the standard is the standard every time they walk on the field. If you don't do it the right way, you're gonna get called out for it. Thank you. If you don't want to do it the right way, that's fine. You're going to be somewhere else. Oh, man, I love that. Thank you. We're not sitting here playing games with players that are talented just because they're talented. If you don't want to be here, you can go. We're not going to sit here and try to baby you and coddle you because you're just this highly touted player coming out of high school, coming out of college. If you don't want to do what you're supposed to do, then you got to go. Love it, man. No excuses. We want people here that want to be here, and that's it. And I'm assuming that when we go through the draft process or interviewing players, free agency, all that type of stuff, we will weed that out early. We will not get to the point where we draft Chase Young 2nd overall and he's here and he doesn't want to be here. No more of that. We'll just go and get another guy that actually wants to be here and is going to do everything in their power and beyond that to do whatever it takes to help the Washington Commanders win a Super Bowl. And I also love the fact that he's not even just talking about players when he says that. That when he says that this won't be for everybody, he's not only talking about players. He said that in the staff meeting, looking at the coaches dead in their eyes, that he's going to weed out the weak in the coaching staff as well. Thank you. No laziness, no weakness, no immense ego. Yeah, you can have an ego, you can have a certain level of confidence to you, but don't let the ego get out of hand. I love it, man. Joe Whitt Jr. brought a lot of energy, and he's bringing a certain level of confidence and swag to him. You know what I'm saying? Like a little flavor to him that I'm excited about. Shouts out to Sam 48 for pointing out these 4 quotes. The way we live is not for everybody. Thank you. I have full confidence in myself. Thank you. We're going to run and put our bodies on people in a violent manner. Thank you. And if you don't do it the right way, you're going to get called out. Thank you. Those are some of the most important quotes from this entire press conference. But wait, there's more. But I also love the blend of humility and confidence that he has. It's like the perfect level, because he said, quote, if a coach says a player can't learn, it's probably because that coach can't coach, unquote. And I love that. Call him out. Call them out. Don't just immediately blame the players. Maybe it is the coach's fault. Remember Darryl Green last year, the Redskins legend, last year said that looking at Emmanuel Forbes, he feels like it's more of a coaching issue than anything else. And I was like, oh man, you're probably speaking the truth, but boy, you just basically killed any chance of you getting hired by this coaching staff. Now that we have an entirely new coaching staff, I don't know, maybe Darryl Green, we have something in the works for you, maybe next year or the year after that or something like that. But I love the fact that Darryl Green was not afraid to call out them coaches. He wasn't afraid to stop being buddy like, hey man, these coaches not doing their jobs. He ain't saying any names, but we're looking at Brent Vesselmeyer, Jack Del Rio, Ron Rivera, and those guys like, y'all failed Emmanuel Forbes more than he failed y'all. And I love the fact that Joe Whitt Jr. is one of those guys that's open-minded enough to see that. Now, some players may just be bad. Some players, I mean, hopefully you do your draft process the right way, like I just said, so you can avoid the next Chase Young situation to where you know if a player is not coachable. But once you have them on your team, a lot of the times it's not necessarily the player. Sometimes it's the coach not doing their job. They just simply can't coach. Thank you, Joe Whitt Jr., for calling that out. Also, again, earlier he said the standard is the standard when every time we walk on the field, and that if you don't want to do it the right way, if you don't want to be coached up, you can go. I love that. Also, Joe Whitt Jr. said that I'm not really a rah-rah guy on game day. And that's the side of him that I was seeing, the logical chess match, Lelouch type of guy. If you're going to do a lot of yelling on game day, you haven't done your job during the week. Now at practice, that's different. Now I love the fact that at practice, he's going to be fiery. On game day, he's going to be more calm, collected, logical, more strategist type of guy. But that might be my favorite quote of the whole press conference. If you're doing a lot of yelling on Sunday, that means you did not do your job Monday through Saturday. That is chef kiss quote right there. I've never really thought about it like that, but that's a great point. Hey man, if y'all not hyped by now, I don't know when you will be, but we still have a lot more great quotes than that to go from. He also continued with that, saying game day is for teaching the player, helping the players, getting them to make the right decisions on their own. I love it. Also, Joe Whitt Jr. in his press conference referenced Ryan Clark as his best friend. And shouts out to We Want Dallas for pointing this out. He said, I'm no Resh Manuel, but I think Ryan Clark might have a strong opinion on who the Commanders could take potentially at number 2 overall. Of course, he's a big LSU guy, went there, always vouching for them, talking about them on ESPN. And you know who went to LSU? Jayden Daniels. So maybe there's the LSU connection there. And then, of course, Resh Manuel had to come in and provide some extra context. He said, yeah, they got the LSU connection. I wonder now if Clark had any input on his former Steelers secondary mate, William Gay, getting hired here to assist Whitt Jr. on the defensive staff. So, because we did hire, again, I'm working on that video later on tonight, we did hire some ex-Steelers that Ryan Clark happens to be really close with to the now Washington Commanders staff. Did Ryan Clark help to influence that since he's Joe Whitt Jr.'s best friend? And then if Ryan Clark has that much influence on this team, could he also have a say in potentially swaying this organization to potentially draft Jayden Daniels? Hey man, highly doubt it, but it's really interesting to think about. Then Joe Whitt Jr. also said that he really liked Emmanuel Forbes coming out of the draft. So the reason that is a good thing to me is because it sounds like he actually has a plan for him ready, dating all the way back before the 2023 NFL draft. Like, it would be different if he said that he liked what he saw in Emmanuel Forbes, saw flashes in him from the 2023 season that he just had rookie at the NFL level. But the fact that he liked Forbes all the way back to his days in college sounds like he actually really does genuinely like him as a player for real, and has a plan to get greatness out of him. And please do. Like, I really hope you can fix us from potentially wasting a first round pick on him. If this defensive staff can come in and fix Jamin Davis, Emmanuel Forbes, and even Quan Martin as a second round pick, And now it looks like we didn't waste those early round picks on players. Well, Quan Martin has looked actually really good to end the season. But either way, they can come in and fix X first round picks and make them look like first round picks to where it doesn't look like we wasted those picks. Maybe we wasted a few years with them, but we just didn't flat out waste the first round pick. That's huge, man. That shows development. That shows that they could do things that previous other coaching regimes couldn't do. Very excited about that. But also, he didn't just talk about Emmanuel Forbes and how much he liked him. He said he also liked Quan Martin. And he said that a number of guys on the back end are pretty intriguing. To get those guys in and to believe into the techniques that we teach them and scheme we put them in, we have some quality young players. And I'm excited about that. He's basically like, man, we got to get these guys in as soon as possible. I'm trying to talk to Percy Butler. I'm trying to talk to Benjamin St. Juste. I'm trying to talk to all of these guys, and we're going to teach them how we teach them. We have a certain way that we want our DBs to play corners and safeties, and they better learn how to basically do it that way. Now, of course, again, they said they're pretty adaptable when it comes to coaching, but we may come in here and teach Emmanuel Forbes to play the cornerback position completely different from how he played it under Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio and those guys. Now, one big difference that I've noticed is that going from Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio's very safe zone scheme, I feel like going to this Dan Quinn, Joe Whitt Jr. potentially Cowboy scheme that's very aggressive, that loves to get pressure on the quarterback and allow their corners to play very aggressively. I think we're going to go more zone to more man. We'll see how that works for Emmanuel Forbes, to be determined. Also, Joe Whitt Jr. said, hey, go ahead and watch all the Cowboys tape you want to try and think you'll know what we'll primarily run, and basically you'll be wrong. Just like people were wrong when they went from Atlanta to Dallas. I love that. They say that they want to build a Commanders defense, not a Cowboys defense. I love that. The ego in that. Like, yeah, go ahead. Watch all the Cowboys tape you want and think that's going to help you when it comes to week 1 in this upcoming regular season and hopefully postseason. We'll see about that. But he's basically saying, yeah, watch all that Cowboys tape. Yeah. You'll be wrong. I love that, man. I just love the personality that's coming up. And shouts out to Mitch Tisler for pointing this out as well. He said, I'm fired up for Joe Whitt Jr. If he takes half of what he's saying to game days, this is going to be an unrecognizable defense. Not only with player improvement like we just talked about, but again, like Joe Whitt Jr., we just talked about, he said, that Cowboys thing, yeah, that was great, but we're going to do a Commanders thing here. So the defense is going to be unrecognizable because we're going to hopefully have players like Emmanuel Forbes and Jamin Davis playing better than we've ever seen before. But also, the scheme is just going to be very different from anything we've seen from the Commanders, very different from what you would probably watch if you go back and look at Cowboys tape from last year or the last 3 years. I'm really excited. This is just going to be a completely new thing, different from anything else that we or even Cowboys fans have seen. I'm excited. Also, one thing that's probably going to make a few people apprehensive a little bit about this press conference, that he did say that the Buffalo nickel is a thing and that he does like that position. So, of course, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, here goes Ron Rivera, Jack Del Rio again. Y'all know me as a Georgia Bulldog fan. To kind of break the jinx, I prefer to call it the star position. That's what we call it at Georgia. But I know a lot of people at the NFL level, especially Ron Rivera and those guys, and now Joe Whitt Jr. call it the Buffalo nickel. But just to let you know, when you're working on your mock drafts and things like that, that position does matter. If you're projecting the Commanders defense, the future Commanders defense under Dan Quinn, Joe Whitt Jr., and all of these guys, Buffalo nickel will matter. But I'm pretty sure, just knowing those guys, that we're gonna utilize it better than Ron Rivera and Jack Del Rio did. But I know a lot of people heard Buffalo nickel and probably got a little bit of PTSD, maybe even twitched a little, wait, Ron Rivera again? Nah, you're good. You don't have to worry about that. Also, Joe Whitt Jr. said, quote, 3-4-4-3. Everyone plays the same coverages, basically. Structure does not matter. The main thing that matters is that we're going to arrive violently, turn the ball over, and disrupt these quarterbacks. I completely agree. Yeah, we could debate about which defense is better, 3-4-4-3, but no matter which side of the argument you're on, you can provide great teams and bad teams that run both of those defenses. At the end of the day, what matters most is that you arrive violently, like Joe Whitt Jr. said, force turnovers like Joe Whitt Jr. said, and disrupt these quarterbacks like Joe Whitt Jr. said. And I also want to point out the fact that all three of those things, why the Cowboys defense has been so great these past 3 years, is because they've done those three things very well. And again, between Dan Quinn and Joe Whitt Jr., that Cowboys defense over the last 3 years has had the most takeaways in the NFL by a decent margin. Number one. Also, Joe Whitt Jr. says that he will be creative in getting his best players in the pass rush situations. Quote, we have some guys here we feel we can create matchup problems with, unquote. Now, of course, That's him boosting up who we already have here. But edge rusher is one of arguably the biggest need we have in this offseason. So, of course, we got to bring some guys in free agency and the draft. I think we need to hit both to be able to bring in some quality guys. But at the end of the day, he says that he wants to be as creative as possible in putting players in the best situations to win. I love that, because he even referenced Micah Parsons when he was talking about this, and basically said that they did the same thing for Micah Parsons. And basically what I take from that is that rather than getting a very talented player like a Micah Parsons and then just being completely dependent on that talent and telling them to just go be them, he's basically saying that they're going to get as creative as possible and put guys like a Micah Parsons, or even guys that aren't even a Micah Parsons, like a KJ Henry, who's currently here right now, and whatever edge rushers we're potentially going to bring in throughout this offseason free agency and the draft, they're going to put them in the best situations to win, even if they are already a great player. So even though say for some crazy reason the Jaguars don't franchise tag Josh Allen, and then we actually end up getting them, they're not going to depend on Josh Allen to just go out there and be Josh Allen and be great. They're going to do whatever they can or everything in their power to put them in the best situations to win on an every snap basis. And I'm pretty sure that's why Micah Parsons misses Dan Quinn already, because he even said it himself before Dan Quinn even became our head coach. He said, man, he was joking about it, but he was probably partially serious about saying, wherever Dan Quinn goes, I'm probably going to follow him, because he probably knows that Dan Quinn is probably one of the best defensive minds to get the best out of him, to give him his best statistical seasons, and to get him paid the most money possible. And I'm pretty sure other free agents out there are probably looking at that. Like Micah Parsons, yeah, he's a great talent, but Dan Quinn put him in the best situation possible to get the most of his production, to get the most stats, and to potentially get the most money in the next contract. You can't tell me other free agents around the NFL, other defensive players, especially edge rushers specifically, aren't looking at what Dan Quinn did with Micah Parsons and looking like, hey man, I want to go be coached by that so I can have my best seasons of my career, so I can go get the most money I could potentially get on the open market on my next contract and things like that. Also, Joe Whitt Jr. said everything starts up front. Exact quote from him when they asked him about Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, and I love that. And that also brings me to the point that, yeah, that Cowboys defense has been elite, but Dan Quinn and Joe Whitt Jr. did not have a Jonathan Allen or a Deron Payne on that Cowboys defense. So if they can find their next Micah Parsons, this Commanders defense has the potential to be even better than what they have for the Cowboys, because again, they didn't even have Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen over there. We didn't have a Micah Parsons, and we still don't, but they didn't have a Jonathan Allen or Deron Payne. So they already have something that they never had when they were coaching up the Cowboys and coaching them to being the best takeaway defense over the past 3 years. Imagine what they could do now that they do have a Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. I also really love his overarching mentality over everything. He said that they are here to win, and he wants the team to know physically, mentally, and emotionally that teams can't mess with us. And I love that. He literally said that he wants other teams around the NFL to know, hey man, don't even show up, because it's not even worth it. You're going to lose anyway. And I love that intimidation factor that he wants to bring to this team, because that was one of the scariest parts about going against Alabama for years, for going against the Patriots for a long time as well, that the type of mentality that teams had going into the game is that they felt like they lost the game before it even started. And that's usually because they're such a dominant force physically, emotionally, and mentally. Like, a lot of that, of course, comes from winning long term and things like that, but it also comes from a certain mentality that you're intimidating the team before they even walk in the building. And if they walk in feeling like they lost before the game even starts, well, that only increases their chances of actually losing. That gives you a mental and emotional advantage over every team that you go against. And I really hope, and it's probably going to take a long time for us to build that and to truly actually be able to enact that level of intimidation on other teams around the NFL. But that's huge, man. If we can get that, I'm telling you, that's how you form a dynasty. When teams go into games just feeling like, oh man, I don't want to go against them. We're going to get hit hard. They're going to be very physical. They're going to be very violent. And things just seem to always work out for them. They just seem like they're the main characters of the NFL. Like, the script writers are giving them the script and them the advantage. And when you have teams thinking like that going into a game, they're already mentally checked out, emotionally checked out. And at that point, you just got to go out there and execute. And you should win more games, way more than you lose. And also, you want to know how we were able to get this great defensive coordinator that just had this great press conference? this guy that we're all excited about, all of these great quotes that we just talked about, it all goes back to Dan Quinn. You got to give him credit. Joe Whitt Jr. even went out of his way to give Dan Quinn credit. He said that he's a big fan of Dan Quinn. He said, quote, he's just the best human being I've ever been around in football. When I moved to Atlanta, he wrote handwritten notes to my kids, and I've never had a coach do that, unquote. I'm telling y'all, this Dan Quinn hire is starting to age like fine wine. It gets better and better every day, man. We said it. I know I said it. Even when Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, and Mike McDonald was still head coaching candidates that were available for us, Dan Quinn was included. Even though I preferred them on the X's and O's side, I did acknowledge that Dan Quinn could probably put together the best staff outside and around the head coach possible out of all of those coaching candidates. And they've exceeded my expectations by far. I mean, look at what Joe Whitt Jr. said about Dan Quinn. He said also, quote, he allows you to be creative. He wants you to think outside the box. The last 2 years in a row, we've been the #1 team in the league in turnovers. And the first thing he told me to do, how can you get more turnovers? Unquote. Dan Quinn, hey man, I'm sorry I was unfamiliar with your game. I apologize. Thank you for becoming our head coach. Thank you. Thank goodness Ben Johnson backed out. I mean, even the fact that Dan Quinn is out here stealing coaches from Mike McDonald, that tells you what you need to know there. It's stealing the special teams coordinator, Larry Izzo, for the same exact position here. No promotion. Just straight up took him. I prefer to go be a special teams coordinator for Dan Quinn than the Seattle Seahawks, where I've been for years and have chemistry with all of these players under Mike McDonald. Bobby Slowick backed out. Apparently, the Commanders weren't even interested in him they preferred Dan Quinn over him. But when it came to Ben Johnson, apparently the Commanders were interested in Ben Johnson more than Dan Quinn from everything it looks like. But boy, we missed a bad one right there. Boy, we dodged the bullet. Dan Quinn probably literally was the best guy for us, and being able to bring in guys like Joe Whitt Jr. says that more than anything else. And again, when talking about creating turnovers, Joe Whitt Jr. also said we're going to attack the ball every way we can. And then he also had this one-liner saying his philosophy is ball is life. And me personally, I don't really care about one-liners like that. That doesn't get me excited like a lot of people are probably excited out there to hear. He's going to say the same thing over again. He said, quote, the ball is life. It's like air. We've got to have it. We've got to go get it. I don't care about quotes like that, but I just wanted to read that to y'all just in case if that gets you excited. I don't judge you or anything. If that's just not my thing. I don't care about one-liners. I want to hear specifically what we're doing and how we're going to do it. That's why I'm so excited about all of those other quotes. Ball is life. Cool. Yeah, you can put that on the shirt, but those type of things don't move me personally. But basically, everything else he said has me very hyped up. I can't explain how excited I am, man. And JP Finley brings up a great point that Joe Whitt Jr. is real easy to like. He said, quote, it's my family, my faith, and my football. I'm a simple guy. And then that's another one of those kind of one-liner things where it doesn't necessarily move me, but it's still good to hear, man. He was really transparent. He said that his kids are basically his only real hobbies. His wife runs the household, and his dad was a hard-nosed coach, and that's basically his foundation and why he's able to be as great as he is. That's good to hear, man. That's really good to hear. Also, before we get up out of here, shouts out to Craig Hoffman for pointing this out. With his back and forth, is Craig Hoffman going back and forth with Fall of Dan Kine on Twitter, aka Daniel. I just want to bring up these points that they brought up as well before we get up out of here. Craig Hoffman started with saying, with understanding how to teach and that the responsibility of learning is on the teacher is perhaps the most important thing he said today. And that's why I emphasized it earlier, because Joe Whitt Jr. did say, quote, if players are struggling, that's our fault. I'm dyslexic. I always talk about coaching the creative learner. If he struggles to learn, it's our job to teach them in many different facets and ways to get the best out of them. That's why they pay us, unquote. And I love that. I agree with Craig Hoffman. That may actually be the most important thing and the best thing he said all day. And so then off of what Craig Hoffman said, bringing that up, Fall of Dan Kine brought up the fact that it feels like this staff isn't just stuffed with talent, but it seems like humility, flexibility, and collaboration are paramount in Dan Quinn's eyes. Every day that goes by, I get more hype for the future of this team. And then Craig Hoffman replies and says, I think this is well put and it's really exciting. It's also moderately terrifying. And I agree, man. I didn't think I would be this excited. And I'm honestly a little afraid about how excited I am getting. Like, I mean, I know there's a little PTSD, and I'm kind of like, yeah, like, don't worry about that. This is a completely new regime, new owner, new literally everything. The only thing the same here from last year are maybe some of the players and like two and a half positional coaches. That everything else is completely different. All of the losing we've been doing has nothing to do with what we have going on right now. But I understand it's still a little difficult to put your heart on the line. But like I talked about in the big stream with Louis T, Rio Robinson, and Ed Oliver that we had last week, man, the reason I'm putting my heart on the line this time for sure, and it's also on the commander side of things and why I'm so optimistic, again, this coaching staff, this front office, of course, but also just to go on a small little tangent real quick, as a Georgia Bulldogs fan, I regret the fact that I didn't put my heart on the line that first year that we were winning the championship. And I said it. I was saying in the live streams. A lot of y'all were doubting it in my live streams. Like, y'all say this every time. Georgia's so talented. But at the end of the day, they can't beat Alabama. So what does it matter? That's what everybody kept saying to me. But I kept saying, man, hey, don't sleep. But at the same time, I didn't put my heart on the line. I've been disappointed in national championship games, SEC championship games recently. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go into the season pretty humble, and we'll see what happens. But then we ended up winning the championship, and then when I look back after winning the championship, I'm like, man, if I would have believed from day one, it would have felt that much better when we finally won it. So I'm taking that experience with my Georgia Bulldogs a couple of years ago, and then we ended up winning back-to-back. You know what I'm saying? But either way, I'm taking that experience to the Commanders and basically saying I'm putting my heart on the line day one, because if and when, I'm speaking it into existence, we win a Super Bowl, hopefully sooner rather than later, with this staff, with this front office and things like that, Josh Harris being our owner, I want to make sure I feel it the whole, like I'm there for the entire journey, not just at the very end. Because I'm not saying that it felt like being a bandwagon, but I just wasn't emotionally invested into week one of the Georgia Bulldogs regular season before we won that first of the back-to-back championships. I'm not missing out on that opportunity again this year. This time around, for my Commanders, instead, I'm there week one hard on the line. So that's just me personally. Y'all don't have to follow me, but I'm putting my heart on the line. I'm believing from day one that we're building, because the same feeling I had for my Georgia Bulldogs, like, man, we got Kirby Smart, we got Glenn Schumann, we got all of these great coaches, we have all of these top recruits. This is the year where just on paper it looks like it makes sense. This should be the time that we finally turn things around and really win the big game. And I had all of that on paper, I had all of that logic, but just from emotional damage, I was just like, nah, I won't do it. This time around, and I'm not saying the Commanders will win a Super Bowl this year, next year, or even necessarily the year after that, but this is the time to truly believe that we finally are building the staff that can do it. So that's just my little tangent right there, and to explain why, even though I'm already Mr. Glass Half Full, Mr. Optimistic, there's a reason I'm putting my heart on the line immediately. I'm wearing my burgundy and gold jersey, my Sean Taylor jersey right here, everywhere I go out in public, as if we've already won the Super Bowl, because I just have a feeling it's on the way, and I want to make sure I'm there from day one to enjoy the entire ride, to enjoy the entire process, and not just the result. The result is great, of course, that's what we all want, but just take it from a fellow Georgia Bulldogs fan that even though the result was great, I really wish I enjoyed the process and the ride a lot more than I actually did in real time. And then also, before we get up out of here, Jeremy Reeves, even though he's technically not on contract right now, I really hope we prioritize re-signing him as an all-pro special teamer, not even necessarily as a safety, but at least for that. He tweeted out, Washington fans, you should be excited. These guys are the real deal, trust me. And I mean, what else do you need from a player of the Commanders himself? Because this is a guy that was fighting with fans left and right last year, debating with us, talking about it's not the players' fault, and I believe even at times he kind of pointed the blame towards the coaches. This time around, complete 180. He's like, these coaches though, not those last ones, these that are here now, oh, we cooking something up right now. Be excited, Commanders fans, now is the time. So basically, to back my point about why I'm excited, you also have Jeremy Reeves saying the same thing from a player of the Washington Commanders standpoint, even though he's technically a free agent, but you get the point. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section, let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Man, I am starving. I haven't even eaten yet today. It just keeps being one thing after another. I made my first video, then I was working on my second and third video, then I had the live stream for the press conference. Now this being my fourth video that I'm working on is going to be the second one that comes out, then my second video is going to be the third third one, and then my third one's gonna be the fourth one, which will probably come out later. Then I still have a whole nother one. It's just a lot going on. Again, I haven't even had a chance to eat. It's 6:30 p.m. Gotta hurry up and edit this, get this out. Then I'm gonna finally eat. But I've just been so busy working. But I mean, this is what I love to do. I love it. I love my breaking in gold. I love y'all for supporting the channel and stuff. So I don't mind. I'm gonna eat immediately after this though. Probably, I guess I'll be eating probably by like 7 something 8. We'll see. But either way, man, I'm super excited. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Am I overhyping this? Let me know in the comment section if you feel like I'm doing a little too much and I'm reading too deep into things and that I'm just overblowing how hype we should be about these potential coaches. So let me know if you agree with me. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. Let me know any points that I didn't bring up. If you watched the press conference yourself that I didn't bring up, that I should have brought up, all of that type of stuff. Let me know if you were able to dig out any information from the surface things that they said, kind of like how I did, and to see if you could take any extra information from the things that they said that I may have missed. So let me know everything in the comment section. Again, I'm gonna set aside some time of when I'm finally not extremely busy. I'm gonna set aside some time to go back to even like a week or two and go through every video I've uploaded through the comment section and try to read and reply to as many comments as possible, because I truly mean the fact that I love y'all comments. I've just been so busy I haven't had a chance to. It's just video after video after video. Again, I haven't even eaten yet, and it's 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, man, I'm gonna do my best. Just stay patient with me. I'm gonna get to those comments soon. Even if you commented something like a week or two ago, I'm really trying to get to that as well. I'm trying to go all the way back. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for all of the content. Like I said, I have so many video ideas. I'm putting out this one now. I'm gonna put out another one later tonight. Then I already have a plan for the one I'm gonna do tomorrow and the video after that. I have like videos planned for like the next few days. So stay tuned. Without further ado, I'm out.